Hello and welcome to EPR with your favorite environmental enthusiasts, Nic and Laura. On today's episode, Laura and I talk about men's useless knowledge of planes. We have Tom Abdallah back on the show to talk all things mass transit. And finally, here are some fun facts about the Airbus A380. Number one, runways had to be rebuilt to accommodate it. That's right, folks. It's so big and takes so long, they had to build longer runways. Number two, the A380 is the largest passenger aircraft ever made. I'm going to keep doing this till you make me stop. Yes, absolutely. Number three, each aircraft is staffed by 24 crew. That's so many people. The A380 wingspan is almost 80 meters, and as an American, I have no idea what that means. So we're just going to move on. All right, A380 first class compartments features showers. Oh, in the sky. How about that? That doesn't sound great to me. I don't know if I want to take a shower. I barely want to be in that bathroom for as long as, I don't want to do that. Anyways. What was I saying? Okay, they have 14 closed private suites. There we go.
Sammy's in the zone. Don't even try.
Yeah. Yeah, there's more than 43 million dine-in guests eat on A380 flights every year. That's the most boring of these so far. All right, let's see. First class guests enjoy unlimited caviar. That seems... Oh, these are getting sad now. Okay.
Unlimited caviar. I would not want to go in the bathroom after those people.
I was having such a fun time. The shortest flight you can take is under 2 hours and 50 minutes.
Okay, done.
That's it. No, it's over. Yeah, we ruined it with the caviar thing. All right. Well, now it's not my favorite plane. Hit that music.
NAEP is hosting its next free webinar on climate justice on an international stage, prelude to COP28 and implications for industry, on December 15th at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time and 8:30 a.m. Pacific Time. Join Chris Whitehead, Sunny Fleming, and Maya Carrasquillo for this informative event as they discuss what is climate justice, what actions are being taken on the topic, walk through a few case studies to show the importance of mapping these impacts, and plot a path forward to minimize the risk of the impacts. Check it out at www.naep.org. All right, so 30-second sponsor spot. Nic has 30 seconds to dazzle us with a funny concept that you will want to buy. And if you don't want to hear these, maybe these are too good,
Yeah, I know.
Ideally, we'd like to have like sponsors here instead of putting Nic on the spot. But if this is too much fun, that's not going to happen.
Maybe that's what's happening. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll start boycotting them. How about that? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm ready.
Go.
Okay. So, Laura, you've stubbed your toe before, right?
Yes.
You've done that on furniture, on any number of things. And like, sometimes you're like, man, it's been so long since I've stubbed my toe that I wish I could experience that feeling right now. Yeah. At Stub Toe Consulting, what we do is find ways for you to experience that exact pain whenever and wherever you are. We will come to you with our patented technology to surprise you with bookends and furniture that you swear moved in the night. And maybe it did. Maybe that was us. And now you're stubbing your toe. You're welcome. We also have a new product on the thing that we're talking, wow, I don't know where all my words went. It's a new product. I'm telling you, just going to power through it. And it's going to be shin pain. It's whenever you hit your shins as well, also incredibly painful for something that shouldn't do this to you. That's our new line. So we got stub toe and shin splints. That's what we're after. That's what we're going to do. Stub Toe Consulting. Check us out. Really ran out of words at the end of that one.
Yes. Yeah, you failed on that one.
That was bad. So there you go. That was terrible. How about that? That one was a terrible one. And if only someone had sponsored this, it would be so much better.
It wouldn't exist. It wouldn't be here. So we would not have to listen to I feel like I just stubbed my toe right now just listening to that.
Yeah, there you go. Verbal stub toeing.
The pain is real.
Our next product, actually. So weird that you would say that.
Oh my God, let's get to our segment.
On my flights out, like it was bizarre. Like literally, like I'm sitting next to this woman, and like I breathed in air. I was like, but then I like coughed during that, so then I couldn't stop coughing, and like she's like, putting her mask on.
I would too.
And I'm like, no, it's just air was in my throat. Right? And I'm like, he's like, yeah, okay.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's embarrassing. Like, how do you explain to that? No, I'm just an idiot. It's not that I'm sick. I'm stupid. I can't breathe correctly.
You know how the some of the I don't know if it's a certain type of plane. Probably you know this, Nick, because dudes just know everything about planes for some reason. But when the air circulates when it's first starting up, like to back out of the gate or whatever, like exhaust fumes, at least it smells like exhaust. It comes into the cabin. Yeah. That makes me choke and cough every time. And it doesn't seem to happen to anyone else. But that's when I'm coughing on the plane and everyone's like, what's wrong with her? I'm like, it's the exhaust fumes.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, it does happen. And
why does it do that? I don't understand.
No, it's literally like they're refueling the plane right before, like they're fueling it up, and they remove the gas line, so it's just the vapors from. Like, I did know the answer.
I was going to say, you see this, Sam? He did know.
Oh God! I should have been like,
I knew you would know it
whatsoever.
What do you mean? Why would I know that? I don't know.
Not all. So anyways, my favorite plane is the A380, and
which is that like a commercial plane, a World War II bomber?
What is that? Commercial. It's the largest commercial jet there is, and it's just massive. That's really the only reason why. It's just a huge plane with 4 jet engines, and it looks like when it's taking off, like it's not going to make it. Like it takes off, and it's like, oh God, here we go. It looks like it's straining, and I don't know why, but yeah, it's a cool plane.
See, I just don't understand why. Where did you learn this? Like, there's no airplane magazines.
No,
is there?
The internet exists. No, well, I mean, they have like all of the planes have brochures in them, and if you are, of a certain ilk and age, you can look at them. And I mean, if you want to have useless dad facts for no reason, like I don't even have, like I say, I have no kids, so this doesn't make any sense. But I'm just like, one day I'm going to just have all these facts. And I was talking with someone yesterday. My favorite useless fact is that cheetahs do not have retractable claws, right? They just don't. They're just
already always ready to
always ready to go. They have dog feet, so they are cats with dog feet, and that completely useless. But I said it this week at leadership, with our leadership. We actually had a really great conversation about it. Like, I'm going to remember this forever. I'm like, good. Now someone else will have this. I'm
going to remember this for my spirit animal talks.
Right. You
feel like your claws are never detracted. Yeah. Maybe you're a cheetah.
I'm a cheetah.
Always ready to fight.
Always ready. Yeah, but they're not trying to grab you either. They don't need to hold. They are trippers. They trip you. That's their thing. So they don't need. They can always be ready to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sam, do you know useless plane facts?
No, but I have Peter for that.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Great answer.
He's actually thinking maybe when we move out of the city, he'll take up like pilot lessons. Like join a club or something. That's how. Yes, Nick. That is how independent he is.
Nick is literally choking on his coffee.
Yes. Yeah. So when Laura, you brought up just guys just seem to know about plane stuff. I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
You'll be like a plane will be flying overhead, and it doesn't matter what man you're with. They're like, that's a blah blah blah.
Yeah.
How do you know that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's an A320. It's not nearly as cool as the A380. So
right?
Out there, yeah. I
mean, it takes this many gallons of fuel and holds this many passengers. I'm like, how do you even have capacity for that info in your brain?
First introduced into the military in 1974. Yeah, it's like, why do I know these things? And it's just
can't remember to take out the trash, but I got all this other information.
Yes, that's 100% true. That's why. Actually, the remembering trash responsibilities is gone because it's been replaced with
different part of your brain.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I'm sure that's why. That's my reasoning anyway. Too funny.
Oh, that's awesome. Let's get to our interview.
Yeah. Hello, welcome back to EPR. Today we have Thomas Abdallah, the Chief Environmental Engineer at MTA Construction and Development, back on the show. Welcome back, Tom.
Oh, it's great to be back. Thanks.
Yeah. So, I mean, what's been happening? What's new with you since you were last on the show?
Well, yeah, I mean, it seems a lot of things have been happening since the last time I came on. I published a second book. Well, it's actually a sequel to my first book, Sustainable Mass Transit, and I kind of updated that. I've actually even gained another job. I was also I've been a professor at Columbia University's Sustainability Management Program since 2013, but I'm also now a part of City College, City University of New York, doing another gig on transportation in the Charles Rangel Workforce Development. It's kind of a free program. I'm the transportation curriculum lead. So I'm adding jobs as I come,
Yeah, you're supposed to, ease into retirement, right? That's kind of the
yeah.
Well, actually, so I definitely want to get into your second book, but before I dive into that specifically, how did you start getting into teaching? What was the thing that led you to those universities and colleges?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always been a mentor, and always been somebody who's wanted to talk to young people about what I've learned as a practitioner. And I used to do guest lecturing. I also mentor a lot of people at work. I have, 80 people reporting to me. At some point, I've had 116 people.
Oof,
So, I started hiring young people, entry levels, and, you have to nurture them and I, nurture them with teaching and examples. And so I think, I was just sort of in the middle of my career, and, people would notice and they'd say, yeah, you're such a leader. You're such a good mentor. I just was doing that. It sort of came natural.
Yeah.
So I just, got invited to teach, and I just took advantage of it. Colleges and universities want to have practitioners as adjunct professors. I think that is something that I always preach to my colleagues. That is, and it's so rewarding.
Oh yeah,
and it's so fascinating. It keeps you sharp too, by the way.
Oh yeah, it has to. Right? It absolutely has to. Yeah, those are the brightest minds. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's really cool to hear. I'm really glad that you get to do that as something I've thought about myself quite a bit actually. So yeah, that's great to hear that. But let's dive in. Let's dive into your new book. So we're talking about sustainable mass transit. So what's the sequel? Why write a sequel? And what's next? What's after that?
So when I published my first book in 2017, and it really was to benefit. I really wanted to actually make people aware of the benefits of mass transit. I mean, that was my thing. And over my, at that point, 30-year career, I was making it better. I was, doing environmental mitigations. I was making it more sustainable. So I wanted to, do that was my motivation for the book in itself. And I also wanted to pay homage to the transit world, the mass transit world, and all over the world. I mean, in the United States, we call it, well, in Eastern New York, we call it mass transit. In Europe and other international places, it's transport, mass transport.
Right.
So, but it's a fascinating industry, going back really to the early days of the locomotive and, connecting our country together. So it's just one of, learning about not just the MTA where I work in New York, but, all over the country, mass transit agencies, both trains and buses and ferries. And it was just to me, a fascinating industry. And then what I saw was that industry was really paying attention to the climate change and the issues with, sustainability, and making it really an essential part of rehabilitations and reconstructions and expansion and things like that.
Mm-hmm. So
that's why I wrote the first book. And then about 5 years later, I would say that I checked my numbers as the years went on. I would Google what was my standing in Amazon on certain days, and it would go up and down a lot. And I get excited when it would, go, get to higher numbers or lower numbers, actually, closer to, depending on what category they put you in. So I always wanted to do a second book. So I'll be transparent here. I actually approached my publisher, Elsevier, about 2 or 3 years after the first book came out. I have another idea for another book. And I said, I want to do a book about sustainability professionals.
Mm-hmm.
And they immediately passed. They said, nah, we're more textbook oriented. And it's that's what they do, and they didn't see. So I got a little discouraged, and then they approached me again back. I think my original publisher person was sort of moved on, and then another one came in, and this was after the pandemic, and said, hey, you know what, this is a really important topic, and we like you. So it's kind of invited me to do the second book. So So I asked them, I said, what is the sequel? What is it, like Rocky 2 or Back to the Future 2? What am I doing here? And they said, really, what you do is I had 10 chapters in the book, and they usually want 30% more content in the second edition. So I said, okay, that's good and easy math. I'll do 3 more chapters. But they also said, they want to revise, they want you to revise all the chapters in the book. Mm-hmm. So I actually took advantage of that. I actually created 4 new chapters. One was kind of a revised opening chapter. Yeah. And then I added 4 new chapters. One was sort of where we are at now with the sustainability, going back to my first edition. Right. And then the second, I wanted to include a whole chapter on mass transit's response to COVID, because during the pandemic, there were essential workers, healthcare workers, doctors, nurses, people who, went to the were in the supermarkets. There's some people who still had to go to work. And the mass transit industry had to go to work. They had to, run the buses and the trains all over the country, all over the world. So I really wanted to pay homage to that era, because I still remember it. It was pretty serious. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to put a chapter in that sustainability professionals chapter. At least if I can't get a book out of it, I'm going to add a new chapter. So that mid chapter is kind of like sort of almost separate from the entire book. It's kind of like, and I'm not saying, I am absolutely saying this truth. It was kind of influenced by my relationship with the National Association of Environmental Professionals. It was, I love the whole idea of that particular conference or institute, whatever you want to call it, and what you guys, Laura, are doing. So I was actually kind of influenced by that as well. And then I said, okay, let me add another chapter, look into the future. Yeah. Like what does the future look like in mass transit? So, and then I revised all the other chapters, and I think I went a little too far. I moved around a lot of the pieces. It's almost like you get a second bite at the apple. So you kind of said, after your first creation comes out, you say, I could have done this better. Or that section should have been here or there. And so, and the other thing that Elsevier wanted is they want every chapter to be different than from the first book, because they actually also sell individual chapters. So, these chapters can be purchased, online kind of separately. So they don't want to be confused with the first edition. So I had to even rename all the chapters and everything. And I actually did a lot of removing. I removed things that I think didn't work from the first book, and I kind of rearranged it a little bit. So honestly, it really is a completely different book, but it is kind of the second edition.
Gotcha. So it's not like George Lucas Star Wars. It's more than that, right? So it's So what are the new elements? So what are some of the stuff that you added? You talked about, you touched on it a little bit, but
So, one of the things, I think the biggest sustainability thing that has proliferated since the book is electric buses, electric vehicles in general. And so, across the country, electric buses have, really blossomed in many, including here in New York and in Philadelphia. And almost every transit agency has begun a transformation to zero emission, or, beginning with the electric bus. Even in California, I did research. What they had pledged to do in 2016, they had already done. Like, some agencies like, all right, we're going to have, a complete line all electric. We're going to have a complete fleet all electric. And they actually did it. So I was amazed that after 5 years, really a lot of transformation came in the electric bus space. And it's not an easy thing. I mean, the electric bus, buying the electric bus is the easy part. It's the energy, the infrastructure, the other parts, the batteries, everything. There's a lot more to it. So good for the transit agencies. They really went out of their way and started transforming to reduce emissions. I think that's the big thing. And I kind of predicted it in the first. And the other thing was there's a science in trains called regenerative braking, where as a train slows down, the polarity of the motor in the engine of the train actually reverses and becomes a generator and puts energy back into the third rail.
Right.
And I had written about that in 2016, but I see even more advancements in that area where the energy is not only going back into a third rail, now it's going back into an energy battery, an energy system that's going to store the energy. And even in some places like mostly in European countries, Vienna comes to mind, they're actually putting the regenerative braking back into their power grid with reverse substations. Whoa. So those are the two biggest areas. But I'll tell you one thing that I'm really proud of. When I was doing the first book, I said, I have an idea. Like, if you can spin something, you can create energy or develop energy, right? If you spin magnets around copper wire, you can, create an electrical circuit. And I thought to myself, well, what spins in the transit system? The turnstiles. Right? So I had said, that would be a great place. Now, they only spin a few times, but, you could kind of wind it up or whatever. You could figure it out. If you ever gone to a gym and you see that some of the bikes will have a monitor in front of the bike as you're doing like a little bike, but it won't work unless you keep pedaling.
Right. Yeah.
So I got the idea from that.
Oh, that's funny. Oh, that's really cool. That's really cool.
So about, about 3 or 4 months ago, actually, in Paris, they were actually experimenting with, and they actually had these they looked almost a little like wind turbines at their turnstiles. And they actually kind of experimented a little bit with that energy. So a lot of the things some of the things that I had thought of actually have, come to fruition. And, I even this hasn't happened yet. I haven't seen it yet, but I also wrote about where there's material that actually, if you step on it, it can actually create some electricity. And I wrote about that in the first book. I'm waiting for that to happen sometime soon. Now that will happen.
I mean, it's really cheap, right? It's super easy. All you got to do is put a mask.
You have to, create the whole idea with the, energy efficiency. It's really based around fourth grade science. Energy is never created or destroyed, right? It just moves on from one place to another. And I think that's, really the future of sustainability and everything is to try to save our energy, but try to figure out how to use it, waste energy and because it's never wasted. So that's really kind of the foundation of sustainability practice is really basic science.
I mean, it wasn't like it's like the basics behind like a hydroelectric dam, right? It's like, all right, it's like, well, we've got all this water just falling down. We might as well use that energy for something. And it's just like, why not? Yeah. And so those are just really unique, practical examples of that. That's really incredible.
Yeah. And it really just takes, see, as an engineer, my position is, I'm not a scientist per se, but what I do is I try to look for sustainable science, advanced technologies, and then bring them into capital construction projects, design and construction, or, pilot projects. So I think that's one of the jobs. I mean, there's a million jobs that engineers do, but one of them is to find something advanced and bring it into like a mainstream. Like, for instance, one of my projects that I did in New York, a bus depot called the Mother Clara Hale Bus Depot. I was trying to find some renewable energy to put in the redesign of the project. It was actually reconstruction. I actually demolished the old building and put up a new one. So I figured I'll go to the National Renewable Lab, which I believe is I didn't go there. I just Googled it, but in Golden, Colorado. They're still looking for like what's the latest in renewable energy. And actually, they had said that their building had what was called a solar wall. And I was like, what's a solar wall, right? So it's really just a metal wall that you put on the southern side. Well, here in the northern hemisphere, you put on the southern side of the building, and then in the wintertime, it's really a wintertime activity. When the sun shines on this metal wall, you put millions of holes in the wall, and you bring air through that metal, heated metal wall, and that is, sort of saves you heating energy. And so I brought that. I found that, and I brought it to one of our projects here in New York.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of like I have to practice what I preach. That's what I tell engineers do, right? So
for sure.
I have to have some examples of it, and I think that's like a circle of life. This is going back thousands of years. Where you take scientific advances and create our world here. And that's going to continue. And that's why I love teaching, by the way. I'll go back to the teaching question. I love to talk about the history and whether any topic, and being at my age now where everyone's younger than me, it seems. I was there in 1989, whatever, when we started the hybrid bus program, and I saw it proliferate. And I was, even sometimes when people ask me, I was born in 1962, so I actually remember the Beatles, the actual ones they were here. And I can actually tell, I remember Ed Sullivan's show and blah, blah, blah. So, wow. It's kind of that aspect of being an elder statesman now, where there are people who are really interested in learning. You got to understand you got to know where we've all come from. So that's one thing I also, again, encourage people. Like, we have amassed all this memory, and let's get it out there to the mainstream. Yeah.
Oh, 100%. And that's kind of really fun. It's fun to see that, generationally, how things go. I remember starting my career and like looking at my bosses, and I'm like, how do they know so much? And they had 20 years on me, right? In the industry. And that's why. I get it now. Now that I have been in the industry for about 15 years, but it's like kind of one of those funny things where you're just like, oh, it just takes time. And
exactly.
We always want to learn everything right away. And it's just some stuff you can't as much as you'd like to.
Yes.
So, you talked a bit about the pandemic, but I'm really curious, actually. So we have some understanding of what the response was to the pandemic, but kind of what happened afterwards. Like, what changed? Yeah. What did the pandemic teach us anything about mass transit?
One thing that I learned, and again, you kind of have to be learning on the fly.
Yeah. That was a surprise to us all, right?
Yeah. And, how germs proliferate, in closed spaces.
Yeah.
And, one of those closed spaces is a subway or a bus, vehicle. And so people would ask me during the pandemic, should I get on the train? Should I get on the bus? And I was like, look, I think there's nothing foolproof, but if everyone on the bus or the train is wearing a mask, that's great. But B, more importantly, the ventilation system. So I learned a lot about ventilation systems, how they have to really much change the air every 10 minutes, whatever air there, and move it in a very quick fashion and then filter it. And so I would say to people, if you get on a train, and especially here in New York, and you don't feel the air conditioning, if you don't, and you know when it's not on, like, you'll go in there and be like, then don't get on it, because that means that people's germs are going to be hovering around. So, but if you get in there, you kind of feels cooler, you kind of feel the AC working, you feel the air being exchanged, then you were a little safer. Now, getting being 6 feet apart was kind of difficult, especially on a train.
Yeah.
But you do the best you can on moving away from people. And for the most part, and again, I only what you read, and I do believe that. I don't think mass transit was a super spreader by any stretch of the imagination. Again, nothing is foolproof. I remember taking a plane ride, and people say, you got to put a mask on. But when you eat, you don't have to put the mask on. Well, then what is that? How's that helping you?
How's it helping?
The germ isn't going to say, the virus is going to say, right. So, and the other kind of misnomer, most people understood, but wearing a mask doesn't protect you. The mask, if I'm wearing a mask, it protects you or other people. And then they wear a mask to protect me. It's like when a surgeon is performing surgery, they're not putting a mask on because the patient is going to contaminate them. It's the other way around.
Yes. 100%.
So it was really, unless everyone was wearing a mask, it was, again, good ideas, but I think it was almost, unless everyone's doing it, again, nothing was foolproof. But definitely, I had people who work for me that I was actually sitting here, like my home during the pandemic, but I had staff who were inspecting, environmental projects.
Yeah.
And, I was kind of, I tried the best I could to educate them on, listen, almost think of it when you leave your home, you gotta be protected, and kind of think of it that way, and don't take anything for granted, and try to be as safe and wash your hands and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it was kind of scary to have people, especially young people, they have to go out and inspect. Construction jobs went on. Those were kind of essential things that went on. So again, that's, there were a lot of people who lost their lives during that period of time. I mean, March 2020 to that year, that was like a severe strain that we're dealing with at that time. And, I remember it. I wanted to pay homage to the people who lost their lives actually, going to work because that was their job. It was really kind of, uplifting that, the human spirit. And, hey, this is my job. I have to drive a bus. I have to, run the trains. I have to go do construction. This is what I do.
Yeah.
And, unfortunately, it was a sacrifice that many people made. So part of my dedication of the book was to the people at MTA who lost their lives. 583 people, lost their lives in COVID. So as we're getting out of the pandemic, and I don't know if we're out of it yet.
I know, right? It's it's the new normal, I think.
Yeah, and I think that has affected transit. I mean, here in New York City, we were used to having 6 million people take the train every day, and then now we're about 4 million, and we're actually, we got 4 million. We got about 67. Right. It's slowly over the years have been, creeping up. And again, I think the ventilation systems, it's the same principle. I know I see a lot of people on the train, and they don't touch anything. They have like a napkin that, wraps around the pole. I mean, you should and could do things like that. But I think the effect on mass transit is now there's a lot of people working from home.
Yes.
So it's a complete, even if you go back to my first book about how I talked about the benefits of mass transit, one of them is it builds cities, right? Mass transit built New York City.
Yes.
Because you could bring people into a central business district. Well, that's a paradigm that doesn't work anymore. Hey, I can work at home. I can work at home, and I can do work in California. I can do work all around the world. So it's kind of a new paradigm. So it's like, it's going to be a while, I think, before we get complete back, because I do think that, I was took the bus yesterday to work. Fridays in New York City is like dead. I mean, I don't mean dead, but it's
I know what you mean.
Less than robust, because most people are, doing their Friday work from home, or it's usually a Friday or a Monday, I think. So the whole thing is like shifted. But one thing I've seen, people are still driving. I think the driving level has returned to normal. I take the express bus here in Brooklyn to Manhattan every day.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I think I want to see in the future. I want to see more express buses. I want to see more bus rapid transit. I want to see more dedicated lanes. Get the cars out of the lane for the buses to take people back and forth, even in the commuter world and stuff like that. So I take if you're familiar with New York City, I live in Bay Ridge, Dyker Heights, and I get on the bus, the express bus, and then it goes into an HOV lane on the BQE, which is always packed.
Yeah,
always. And in fact, I'm sitting on in the HOV lane with the bus, and it's going at regular speed, and I'm waving to all the people in traffic. They're all sitting there in traffic. Right. So the car traffic has returned.
Yes.
To where it was. I mean, traffic here in New York City is just, much like every other packed city, like Washington, D.C. and Boston. It's returned. So while some people are, commuting, others that telecommuting, and then, others are, I think more people are returning with the car. So again, same thing. I want this book to promote the benefits of mass transit, why it's kind of the best thing a city can implement to reduce the particles in the atmosphere and greenhouse gases. And, one of the things about the COVID, the pandemic during that period of time when no one was going to work, the air quality was better. And that was the direct correlation, the fact that people weren't driving. So it still matters. It still matters that, and again, there are some places here in America that you have to take a car. Yeah. I mean, it's like this. So in that case, okay, then let's see if we can proliferate electric vehicles. At least, at minimally, they won't pollute as they travel around the neighborhood. I think that's one of the benefits of the electric bus. Even though you still have to produce it, or you develop the electricity, and a lot of times that's fossil fuel usage anyway. Right. But at least in areas where there are people who suffer with asthma, you can at least somehow reduce the amount of particles in the atmosphere and greenhouse gases. So I think that's the new normal now, and we have to figure out ways to get people back into mass transit and convince other cities that don't even have mass transit to actually think about it.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's funny. You sparked that question for me. Cause like, I think, talk about New York, great mass transit, DC, pretty good mass transit, Raleigh, North Carolina, terrible mass transit. And this is my personal opinion, but we don't have a metro. We have buses and they don't go everywhere. So there's some challenges, I think, in different places. So how does that work? Like, I would love for Raleigh to get mass transit. It would be fantastic.
Yeah. I think if you look at New York, Boston, Chicago, even to lesser, Washington, DC, that's like heavy rail, right?
Yeah.
There's a subway tunnel here in New York. We have 350 miles of below ground subway tunnel.
Right.
But there is lighter rail systems. And that's really it's a lot of that in Europe, electric streetcars, some people call them, where, you're actually traveling above the ground and sometimes in tunnels, but still, I think there's also potential light rail systems. I would suggest that for Raleigh, and it's not nearly as expensive. I mean, it's not cheap, but I do think like places, like I was in Portland, Oregon. Their complete city system is a light rail system, and it's kind of like even the center of their system that rolls around in a loop is free. And then if you want to go to suburban places, you have to pay. But I think light rail systems could be something that a city that doesn't have a robust mass transit system should consider. And something called bus rapid transit. I was kind of mentioning that earlier, where a bus has its own dedicated lane. I don't mean even here in New York City, we have what's called select bus service, which means between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. That's a bus lane only, right? But that's not bus rapid transit, because that means cars can still get into the lane. But bus rapid transit is actually a lane that only buses travel in. In fact, cars can't even get there.
Right.
And I think that any city can figure out with their urban and transportation planning ways of creating these bus rapid transit. It's almost mimics, the train system. You pay at a station. It's almost like a platform that is like mimics a train station or subway station, but it's a bus.
Yeah.
And the larger, more of an express bus works, or an articulated bus, which is kind of like those buses that they almost look like an accordion.
Yeah.
Right. But they actually they don't go like this. No. It's like a hinge, but it looks like an accordion.
It does. Yeah.
But those larger capacity buses, and obviously, hopefully they're electric as we go forward, and create that opportunities to bring people. And my opinion is, look, I own a car, transparent. I have a car. I drive. We went shopping this morning. I use a car. But I think getting up to go to work and coming back from work, every person should have the opportunity to take mass transit.
Yeah.
To get to work, to get home from work, or get to school, or get to a ball game or place. So I think that's what, again, going back, like, motivations for this kind of book is to, like, those little towns, like, you can actually put mass transit. It's going to be better for your city. It's going to be to better quality of life. And things have changed. Like right now, I know exactly when my bus is coming. We have apps for that, right? App is coming, and in 5 minutes the bus will be here, or how many stops away it is. Even train systems, bus systems. I think that's changed dramatically over the last 2 decades.
Yes.
Where I think one of the stress points of taking mass transit is, when is this train coming? All right. And now we know exactly where every train, and we know where every bus is, so we can actually relay that information to people, and they can actually time their day around when the bus or train's coming. And I think that's also another way to get people to say, okay, maybe this is a good idea. Leave my car in the garage, and take the bus. So there's, those are the kinds of things that can be done. Yeah,
which is absolutely fantastic. And it's, so we could probably spend the rest of our show talking about just these things, but, there's a couple other things I want to touch on too. Mm-hmm. We talked a little bit about professionals. We talked a little bit about how you work with students, and I kind of want to marry those a little bit. So can you kind of give me an idea on how, environmental professionals can be great sustainability champions?
Yeah. So I think first it starts with hard work. All right. I mean, I think, and passion. And I think that's the one thing that I see from the students that I've mentored and taught, and they can come from any background. You don't have to be an engineer. You don't have to be an architect. You don't have to be an environmental scientist. You can literally come from any educational or industry background because there's a sustainability element in everything.
Right.
Work in a restaurant, right? You saving, the recycling and the composting of the scraps, how dishes are washed.
Yeah.
I mean, everything, every industry, the airport, the aviation industry, every industry has a sustainability element to it. So learn the basics of energy efficiency, air quality, water quality. There is some certain sciences you have to sort of understand. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to know the refrigeration cycle and the thermodynamic science, but you have to know sort of around those, have a little bit of an understanding of that.
Yeah. Enough to be dangerous.
That's exactly. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And then you have to know your industry, right? So in my case, I have to know the mass transit industry. I have to know what environmental mitigations are necessary where. I have to understand how the transit system works, how electricity gets into the system, how we get energy to our trains. I have to know all that. So you have to sort of have to know, the basics of environmental sustainability and then the industry that you want to apply it to. So you have to sort of be a steward of both. And, the industries are, wide range, like transportation is wide range, right? You have trains, you have buses, you have ferries, you have planes, you have monorails, you have trucking, you have freight. So you can sort of be an expert on the industry, agriculture, or, water or stuff like that. Or whatever it is, you need to know the system that you're actually advising to how become more sustainable.
Yes.
And you have to listen to people. Yeah.
That's so true. That's like number one. Yeah. Listening. Yeah. That's a great point.
Yeah. Listening to, especially, if we're going to be introducing new applications to our system, well, I'm not going to be running that system. Right. So the people who are running it, and they have great ideas. Right. People, maintainers, plumbers, carpenters, they know what they have to do. And so sometimes you listen to their ideas about what could be more sustainable in your case, because, sitting here reading drawings, it's a little different than actually being in the actual area where you want to make some difference. So listen to the people who are going to actually run your systems, especially if you're going to be introducing newest technologies like computers and stuff. Not everybody's computer, savant. And so there has to be, basic training when it comes to introducing, new technologies, because it's going to be the blue collar workers that are going to be, doing it. And so you have to listen to them and listen to what they say, and then tailor your new applications to make sure that they're capable of, and they are, mostly capable of doing it, but you can't just say, hey, here's a computer terminal, just get going.
Oh man. I mean, like, it's a great point. I remember having a project in DC, if you're familiar at all with Ward 8, it's the poorest district at the time. They were like, oh yeah, 40% of the employees that are coming here are going to be using mass transit. And the community is like, where's that data from? That's the first question they ask. Where's it from? Oh, that's how many people currently commute. And they're like, our metro is a mile away from where you are going to put this building. Yeah. So you don't have any other plan to get them from the metro to your place. That's not happening. And it was a great example of what you're just talking about. It's like, oh yeah, this community knows exactly what's here, what they need. And, ended up being a really great positive thing that came from it. But it was, the community involvement is super important for that exact
Absolutely,
reason.
Especially in the environmental world, right? I mean,
100%. Yeah. And it ended up being a really great thing, and ended up being, they got more transit basically to help with that. So very, very cool stuff. I love talking through that. And I want to kind of dive in a little bit on your career too, because I don't want to sell you short. So you've written a book, you've written another book. We talked a little bit about some of your other achievements, but what are the ones like for your career, for your path? You're a professor. What else do you have on a high board?
Well, I kind of did a little thinking about who I've worked for in my career. I worked for the MTA, New York iconic institution. It goes back, 100 years. In fact, yesterday was the anniversary of the New York City transit system from 1904. October 27th. So it's called Subway Day.
Yeah.
So I worked for Columbia University, another iconic institute of higher learning here, and very, very famous. And I also worked for City College, which is, again, these are institutes that go back hundreds of years, 100 and years plus. I love the campuses of Columbia and City College. They both, like, I work in a building at Columbia campus called Alexander Hamilton. It's the oldest building, I think, on campus. So they're unique structures. But I actually also worked for the New York Daily News when I was in the 6th grade. I was a paper boy.
Oh my gosh, really? That's fun.
I, started working when I was about 6th, 7th grade, 12, 13 years old, whoever. Mm-hmm. So I used to deliver the Daily News, the tabloid type paper here in New York City. And I was an avid reader of the paper when I was very, very young. It was mostly the sports pages, but still, it's another thing I try to tell people: if you want to, educate yourself, read about something you enjoy, be more involved in things like that. So I'd wake up in the morning, 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and there'd be a bundle of newspapers, and I would see the headline of the day, either on the back page or the front page, and I would go to basically within a 5-block radius. As a 12-year-old, I was very popular. I was the only kid that had money, and I used to buy pizza for everybody.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
And then when I was in high school and even into college, I worked for kind of a Brooklyn institute called Sahadi Importing, as importing and exporting of Middle Eastern delicacies, spices, and all kinds of nuts and fruits and berries and all that kind of stuff, and everything that you need to make Middle Eastern food, which is what I grew up on.
Yeah.
And I worked in what I learned from the Sahadi family, the brothers Charlie and Bobby and Richie, and then Charlie's wife Audrey, and the rest of their family. It was a family-run business. Their work ethic was like second to none. As 16-year-old, I would work in their store, and then when I got a little older, I worked in their warehouse. And what I watched them do 12 hours a day, 16 hours a day, weekends, maybe they took Sunday off, I think. And they knew their Middle Eastern delicacies too. They would go to trade shows and food shows and all that kind of stuff. And now they're kind of an empire here in New York, expanding their brand into restaurants and everything. So I kind of learned the work ethics when I came to MTA in 1987, and I loved working there. I've been there for 37 years practically. But not everybody had the great work ethic, and I noticed that, and I actually tried to show off, sort of like, you come in at 9 o'clock, you start working at 9 o'clock, you work through the day, you get as much out of it as you can. I absolutely have the same story that you had at the beginning. I would sit in meetings with project managers, and they know all that stuff. Yeah. Like I'm a chemical engineer, and I got a job as an environmental engineer. Growing, through college, there was civil engineers, electrical engineers, and we were kind of together but separate. Yeah. And then I would see these older engineers, and they knew about electricity, they knew about civil, the concrete, they knew about HVAC systems, and I was like, and I realized at that time, how do I get there? Yeah. And I think I would also listen. I was very fortunate growing up in the MTA at the very beginning. I was in like a 7 or 8 person office. So I heard every conversation that everyone was having. I heard the conversations that my bosses were having with their bosses. And I kind of sort of played along, like their challenges. I would say, okay, well, how would I solve that challenge? Or with limited knowledge that I knew at that time, or even after it was over, I'd ask, why did you say what you said when you got that problem? How did you solve that problem? So I was very lucky at the very beginning of my career that I was in those days where not everyone was in a solid cubicle by yourself. You sort of shared everything. Yeah. The whole world. Actually, one of the things I remember is in 1987, there were people who smoked in the office. That's how far back I go, right? So, this cigarette smoke in the morning, and then in the afternoon there was a gentleman that had a pipe. Oh, wow. Yeah. I have to admit that at the end of the day, the pipe smell was okay. I kind of like. Yeah. Oh, totally different. Yeah. 100%. But that was like a different world. But I actually was able to listen to what they were saying and really ask good questions. And you could tell right away who you want to talk to, who would be interested in talking to you. Not everybody wanted to, you get away from me, kid, Yeah. But, 100%. You learn who's receptive and who's not. Yeah. But I mean, it probably, in a way, I think even being that way kind of also probably helped you become a good mentor to other people. Yeah. I don't know if you were like me, but I remember having those exact same experiences and then being like, well, when I'm
in a position to, with this knowledge, all I want to do is share it.
Yes.
You know, and so I don't know, how does that influence, like, is that one of the reasons why you work with grad students? Or
Yeah, I think so. I think you learn from everyone.
Oh yeah.
Above you, below you,
Yes.
you learn from every single person. You learn from every consultant you work with. You learn what to do. You also learn what not to do, right? So
Yeah. Yes.
there are, it's just that learning. I think, yeah, absolutely. That's kind of what I saw. And I remember the old days, right? You would get chastised for stuff. Like, I don't think it's like kind of legal to chastise people the way they did about 35 years ago.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
And I would be like, I'm not going to make you kind of like make you feel like a little smaller.
Yes.
And then I was like, I'm not going to let that happen to my younger staff. I'm not going to let that happen. I'm not going to do that. So yeah, I definitely think you learn about what you think was the right thing to do. And then of course, use your own, judgment on things. Everybody's different, right? So that's another thing. Treat everybody. I don't kind of like the term, treat everybody the same. Well, no, everybody's not the same.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
Treat people. They're all different. Saying, when I teach a graduate course, these are people who are already professionals and they're a different audience than undergraduate students. They are just sort of forming. They haven't fully cooked yet. And they have an education. It's more about education. So you deal with them in a different way. Yeah. I've also spoken to high school kids as well. And the one thing I make myself, I said, don't talk down to them. Do not talk. They'll see that immediately.
Yes.
Give them respect. Give them that. And I think that's one of the things I hope to pass on, is I think I give everyone the respect that they deserve and give them credit. Like, young kids, are really, really smart, but sometimes you just have to get them out of the shell.
Yes.
And you have to, bring them along a little bit.
Yeah. And that's absolutely great. Totally agree with you. I couldn't agree more, really. So I love that. I know we're getting close to time, but we have one last thing I want to we talked about at the beginning, but I want to bring it back to it. So the future of mass transit. So what are our challenges ahead? What's coming in the third edition?
Okay. Well, I think one of the things that I'm working on now that I didn't even discuss in my first two books, I think it's not only the carbon footprint of your operations, but it's the carbon footprint of the materials that we're using. The concretes, the steel, even like, I'll just take an example, wind turbines, right? Great. Love wind turbines, create, energy just by the wind.
Right.
But how much energy did it take to make that material? Right. How much energy did it take to transport that material? So that's a fascinating thing for me that I'm just sort of getting involved with, specifically around concrete and cement. And concrete and cement, they're high energy users. And so how can we produce the amount of concrete that we need, especially for infrastructure, without, using so much energy as well? I think also in the terms of the energy used for the vehicles, hydrogen, I think, that's another way that we can reduce the greenhouse gases and stuff. Not the only issue, but one of the issues with hydrogen, it's the most abundant element on the planet, but it doesn't come as hydrogen. You have to extract it from water or combust it from fossil fuels. So once you get the hydrogen, liquid hydrogen, you can actually put it in a fuel cell bus, and it goes without any emissions except for water vapor.
Right.
So just quickly, I did one of my case studies. I had 20 case studies in the first book. I think I have 25 in the second book, but some of them I updated. And there was an agency in Illinois, in Champaign-Urbana. I love that. Champaign-Urbana. So they have two hydrogen fuel cell buses. And so they have an electrolysis machine in their maintenance shop, which is, just basically extracting the hydrogen from the water.
Yeah.
And, that takes electricity, that takes energy to run. But that's being powered by solar panels. So it's kind of like a full circle, solar panels driving the electrolysis, which puts the hydrogen into the bus. And then the bus, goes around without any impact to the environment. So that's, I think, and some locomotives, there are some locomotives in Germany, in Lower Saxony, Germany. I think they're using the hydrogen in their locomotives. I think that's another future. And the other thing is, we kind of talked about this at the Ask Me Anything podcast. Artificial intelligence, and
right.
I think one of the things I'd say, I think definitely there's going to be some attachment in the mass transit industry to, artificial intelligence, autonomous vehicles. I think that's definitely a future. And it would be great if you wake up in the morning, shower, shave, get ready, and then all of a sudden there's a driverless car will take you to the bus stop, or the train stop will take you and you'll never have to use, hopefully it'll be an electric autonomous vehicle. But I think that's the future. I think we should not be afraid of it. We should not be afraid of autonomous vehicles, artificial. I know they're not ready yet, but I think the Waymo Corporation is running
in Phoenix.
In Phoenix and San Francisco, I believe, they're running
I saw it. It's crazy.
And it's one of the things I talk about in my city college, this fascination with the autonomous vehicles and actually how do they work? Right? Yeah. This is advanced science to the nth degree. So those are things that I think the future, and I think also going back to my original thing about electric buses need to be powered by, battery needs to be charged.
Right.
And we have this regenerative braking in the subway system and the train system that could go into an energy storage system. So why don't we marry the two? You got the energy that's going back into an energy storage system, and then use that energy storage system to power the electric buses. So it's kind of like a kind of a full circle type of thing. So the one thing about the future, it's bright. And I think you just look at the past, how we've technologically, advanced over the years, right? Yeah. You and I are talking on a Zoom thing. I never even heard of Zoom before the pandemic, right? So things are changing. They change rapidly. And I have really, really high hopes and, extremely optimistic.
That's really great. I love to hear that. I hate to let you go, but one last question. Is there anything else we missed that you want to touch on before we do?
Well, I think this is a great conversation. And I think I definitely, have heard your podcasts with Laura, and I think they're great. And I think these are the types of things that we have to communicate with each other, right? So we have to do these types of things. Kind of gives back to not only the younger generation, but the current generation. So I think we have to, we just have to communicate and not be afraid of talking and asking questions. There's no such thing as a dumb question, and just kind of put yourself out there and be the best person that you can be. Me, you, everyone else. Just be the best and work hard. And if you work hard, be the best you can be, good things will happen.
100%. I love that. Last but not least, where can people get in touch with you in case they do have a question for you?
Yeah, well, I'm on LinkedIn, Thomas Abdallah on LinkedIn. My email address here in New York City is Thomas, THOMAS Abdallah, ABDALLAH at MTACD.org. You can get in touch with me, and I love to have conversations with everybody, and especially on LinkedIn, where I posted a lot of things. I love listening to and reading about it, and I learn a lot too. And you're always learning, always
100%. Couldn't agree more. All right, thank you, Tom, so much. It was great to have you on.
All right, take care. Have a great day.
That's our show. Thank you so much for joining us, Tom. Please be sure to check us out each and every Friday. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. See you, everybody.
Bye.